What happened to the original documents that Berossus once used, the Cuneiform tablets? For a long time, these tablets did not attract the interest of travelers and historians. They were considered strange-looking bricks, with unusual designs inscribed on them. Incidentally, these bricks burned in hell and inscribed by demons are mentioned in the Muslim Quran. That is, the symbolic meaning of the patterns on clay was known even to the Prophet Muhammad. The first European scholar to understand them was the Italian Pietro della Valle, who lived in the 17th century. In one of his works, he published a sample of ancient writing. In 1700, the Englishman Thomas Hyde called these marks cuneiform script. However, many scholars still did not believe that these strange symbols were actual writing, and the debate over them continued for many decades. In 1761, Carsten Niebuhr led a Danish scientific expedition to the Middle East. All the participants, except for Niebuhr, perished. Niebuhr himself traveled for 4 years through the countries of the region, managing to visit the ruins of the palace at Persepolis and copy the inscriptions on the walls there. In 1772, in his book, Description of a Journey to Arabia and Surrounding Countries, Niebuhr identified 3 types of cuneiform writing and 42 characters, presumably an ancient alphabet. It was only at the beginning of the 19th century that research resumed, spurred by the study of the so-called Rosetta Stone, discovered during Napoleon's campaign in Egypt. This basalt slab contained a parallel text in 3 languages. In 1802, a young teacher from Göttingen, Georg Friedrich Grotefend, bet that he could decipher the symbols, which had long remained unreadable. On September 4, 1809, he realized that a group of symbols, which repeated in the same combination, meant Great King, King of Kings, and referred to 2 known rulers of the 5th century BC. Thus, the meaning of one inscription was established: Xerxes, Great King, King of Kings, son of Darius, of the Achaemenid dynasty. The British diplomat Henry Creswick Rawlinson copied the entire massive cuneiform text in 3 languages, inscribed by order of King Darius on the slope of the Behistun Rock, near the western border of Iran. This greatly facilitated the work of linguists. After 12 years, an international team of researchers managed to decipher the texts. In 1853, G. Rawlinson noted that in Assyrian, Babylonian, and Akkadian texts, especially in scientific ones, there were words borrowed from an unknown language. Then, in 1869, the French linguist Jules Oppert identified a large number of tablets with texts in a language that was still unknown, but was actively used in the 4th millennium BC. As was later discovered, this was the Sumerian language. Almost all the ancient cities of Mesopotamia, due to historical and climatic reasons, ended up buried under shifting sands. For archaeologists, the territory of Iraq in the late 19th and early 20th centuries became something akin to the American Klondike. In Mesopotamia, hidden cities were densely located, so the problem was not where to find an ancient settlement, but which settlement was worth excavating. The first to correctly determine the location of the legendary capital of Assyria, Nineveh, was K. Niebuhr in 1766. One of the first to begin excavating the hills opposite Mosul was the French consul Paul-Émile Botta, but he failed to find anything unusual. Nevertheless, he accidentally discovered the palace of King Sargon in Khorsabad in 1843. As a result, Khorsabad was excavated and studied by the French and Nineveh by the British. As was often the case at that time, archaeological excavations were conducted in a looting and destructive manner. The exact locations of objects were almost never recorded. Until the beginning of the 20th century, individual bricks from the walls of buildings were not studied at all, although they contain a wealth of information. Initially, even cuneiform tablets were discarded as rubble. In the 1840s, the London lawyer Austin Henry Layard began excavations. Under his leadership, Nineveh was excavated and the enormous library of King Ashurbanipal was discovered, which included about 25,000 clay tablets with cuneiform texts. According to the latest estimates, hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of tablets still remain buried in the ground. In 1849, Layard published a book titled Nineveh and Its Remains, which contained many sensational revelations. Fortunately for researchers, most of the texts unearthed were written in the Akkadian language, the study of which was facilitated by its similarity to Hebrew and Arabic. In the records of King Ashurbanipal, historians found the following curious phrase: "The god of scribes has endowed me with the gift of knowing his art. I have been initiated into the mysteries of writing. I can even read complex tablets with texts in Sumerian. I understand the mysterious words carved on stones in the days before the flood." Thus, the hypothesis of the existence of a long-lost people, the Sumerians, emerged. Subsequent research allowed scholars to learn many details about a state more ancient, wealthy, and powerful than Babylon, repeatedly mentioned in the Bible as the land of Shinar. Moving from the east, they found a plain in the land of Shinar and settled there. And they said to one another, "Let us make bricks and burn them thoroughly." And the bricks became for them instead of stones, and tar for mortar. Genesis 11:2-3. Later, historians, comparing the data from the Book of Genesis, the Book of Daniel, and some other sources with information, identified this land with Mesopotamia and renamed it Sumer. Soon a phonetic adjustment changed the reading of the first syllable to Shu, and the modern name of the ancient kingdom, Sumer, appeared. In 1869, J. Oppert proved that the Akkadians indeed called their predecessors Sumerians and their land, Sumer. The word Shumer literally means land of the watchers. The Egyptians called it the same, Tar Neta, land of the watchers, and believed that it was from there that the gods came to Egypt. As we shall see later, the concepts of gods, sons of heaven, angels, watchers, and those who descended from heaven are often synonymous. The similarity between the names Sumer and Samaria does not seem coincidental either. After the death of King Solomon in 922 BC, the kingdom of Judah split apart. Around 880 BC, the sixth king of Israel, Omri, founded a new capital, which he named Samaria, meaning Little Sumer. Its capture by the Assyrians is mentioned in the Old Testament. In the New Testament, Samaritans are also mentioned in the context of the fact that the Jews did not associate with the Samaritans. Samaria is also known as the place where King Ahab, around 870 BCE, continued to worship the gods Baal and Ashtoreth, and built a temple to Baal, angering the god Yahweh. Soon, all sacred objects and relics associated with the name of Baal were burned. It is also assumed that Shammar, a city mentioned in the chronicles of the campaigns of Alexander the Great, corresponds to Shinar. The next milestone in the study of ancient Mesopotamia was a loud and almost half-century-long scientific debate known as Bibel und Babel, German for Bible and Babylon. It was initiated in the last quarter of the 19th century by Eberhard Schrader. The reason for the debate arose after George Smith, a researcher from the British Museum, came across a fragment of a tablet in the autumn of 1872, the content of which deeply shocked him. The ship stopped on Mount Nisir. The mountain held the ship and prevented it from moving. When the seventh day came, I released a dove and let it go. The dove flew away, circled around, but finding no dry land, it returned. The resemblance to the Old Testament story of Noah was undeniable. On December 3, 1872, Smith gave a report on this topic, and within days the sensation was known worldwide. Since only a tiny fragment of the ancient text had been found, the remaining parts needed to be located. Soon, in addition to new important archaeological finds, 12 additional fragments of the sought-after text, each about 300 lines long, were discovered. However, at this moment, the newspaper sponsoring the expedition, the Daily Telegraph, ceased funding the work. Nevertheless, as a result of these investigations, thousands of clay tablets were brought to the British Museum from the hills that had covered Nineveh for many centuries. After studying them, Smith published The Chaldean Account of Genesis in 1876, which developed the idea that Akkadian predecessors to the Bible existed. From 1877 to 1881, the French diplomat Ernest de Sarzec, on the advice of a local post office director, conducted trial excavations near the mounds of Tello and immediately found a large number of fine diorite statues. In 1898, the Orientalist E. Sachau and the archaeologist Robert Calderway inspected the mound near the village of Waka and unanimously concluded that research in this area was very promising. In November 1912, the walls of several temples of the city of Uruk were discovered there. The level of the ancient culture discovered there astonished the archaeologists. The temple of the god Anu measured 30 by 80 meters and was built of large limestone blocks. The temple of the goddess Inanna was even grander at 50 by 80 meters. The sanctuaries were precisely oriented to the cardinal directions. To everyone's amazement, it was soon established that there was a clear cultural connection between the Al-Ubaid culture and the Indus Valley. It also became evident that Amazonite was imported to Mesopotamia from Transbaikalia and India, among other places. Over time, typical Sumerian seals were found in many other regions, including Central Asia and the Balkans. The remarkable evidence of a close connection between Egyptian, Sumerian, Indian, and Mesoamerican cultures in post-flood times will be examined in more detail in later episodes.